Hey, all right. So, welcome. Come drink the moon juice. I usually start my podcast or like my ramblings with welcome weird ones, but that is so weird how kind of everything interconnects. So, Riley ambushed me and we're doing a podcast. He's forcing me to do it. I've been told to do one for like at least 7 years now. And now my friend is making me do it against my will in a positive way. So, welcome, Riley. He started his own podcast, and then through him starting his podcast, I was like, "Fuck it, I'm gonna finally do YouTube. I'm gonna finally listen to people for 5 years and do YouTube." And then within a month of doing YouTube, now you're forcing me to do a podcast. So
Yep,
thank you.
100%.
Welcome.
Welcome. Thank you. Thank you so much. This is cool. This is way cool. Like
This is
we've been talking about this for so long. In the background, like we have podcasts in the background.
yeah. Well,
Like
everyone calls my voice notes podcast. They're like, "Oh, we got a podcast from Sarah today," and I'm like, "They're like, just put it online," and I'm like, "No."
yes, and that because that's like
It's mainly because people are telling me what to do.
well that's your it's your forte. So to me, long form content is your forte. And it's kind of crazy because and I don't want to say it, I don't want to come off in any sort of way, but like in a creator world and in a business world, it seems like not a lot of people can do long form content, right? Because you got to know enough about a thing to keep talking. And you know so much about all of this that you keep talking. So it's like if you record all of that, man, everyone gets to hear it and everyone's in it for a treat on this. I'm excited.
Yeah, I can yap. I have a gift of gab that
Yes,
I have
yes,
had
we do.
since I could start talking. My mother will vouch for this. Everyone would be like, "Did you were you alone too long today?" Like they were just like they just couldn't believe how fast I was talking, how many subjects I got in under like 5 minutes, and they just were like, "Okay." And then I was like, "Oh, I need to shut up." And then sometimes I'll even be like, I notice, so like in a spiritual perspective, they say like when your mind trails off, that's kind of like a signal to like you're kind of burning yourself out a little bit, or it's like in an exercise perspective, you max out, and then it's like okay, you kind of like you got to deload, like you reach yourself to a new level of this throat chakra muscle,
Yeah.
and so I guess throughout my life, I have been working on it and building it up, but building it up in my head because like I mime conversation. So like I've been practicing this on a subconscious plane in the really weirdest kind of psychotic way
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
that I was like, but there was always this like draw to talking, but there was also this huge fear of being seen, which we talked about as like a Leo moon perspective. So like I went to find myself and then found what like I was a big remembering of everything. And it's weird how because like this is how I was practicing it in my head in the shower earlier.
Yeah.
Is that I needed to like I felt like I needed an external validation, like a scale. You need a quantitative, grounded critique or assessment of yourself to know what you're doing. But it's my whole life inside and outside did not make sense, but like I couldn't just take my word for it, but I couldn't take everyone else's word for it either. So then you start seeking these like spiritual principles that kind of give you basically you're on a journey of discernment and figuring out what you absorb and what you don't absorb, and you just kind of have to be okay with it.
That's so crazy. I mean, that's crazy to think about. Like, so in that journey, because that's something you've helped me out a ton with. Because I mean, and we can get into it as much as you want or whatever. But like in this past year, like so many things have changed, and to really be your best self, and this is what you've helped me learn is like, in order to show up at your best, you gotta. It's self awareness, right? It's self awareness, and that within that those words, self awareness, it goes so deep. So it's crazy what you just said. Like, I'm wondering limitations in self awareness. Do you think it's potentially like a willingness or a reservation toward how deep you're willing to go spiritually or in your mind like that in order to find that self awareness?
That's a loaded question. Um, y-
Because it's scary. It's scary. You're going to find some things that that you have established, and this is what I went through is like you're going to find some things that you have built in your mind to protect your own ego in a way that have helped you survive in the world in a certain way. Because, like, if you're under attack, to me, it feels like if you're under attack in one way or another, like your ego's under attack, your personality's under attack, you're trying to, like, you know, present yourself to the world as a certain thing, but then there are attacks that can break that down. You know what I mean? Like, if someone tells you something about yourself that's from a blind side, you're like, oh, I didn't know that that's who I was, that everybody else saw me as, because I saw myself as someone totally different. And so, like, breaking down those ego protectionary mechanisms is not pretty. It's not fun, right?
Well, no, it's not fun because then it's like you have to accept that this person was accurate in their judgment of me, and it really wasn't. I really didn't like it. And it's like, no, I was actually being that way. And then you have to kind of realize, like, well, why was I acting that way? That's
Yeah.
like part of healing, and accountability is understanding why. Because if you know why, then you know how to not do it again or be that way again. Because you, unless like you find like I don't know, you're okay with it. Like people repeat that for a long time, and that's maybe due to denial, not wanting to face those things because it is uncomfortable, or it's that justification of like they really can't see how that person, because like I've been there before where it's like, okay, I have sat with this and I've really dissected it, and I have no fucking clue why you are seeing me in this way. Like I have genuinely tried to hear you out, empathize with you, and at this point, I just can't agree with you. And sometimes it's wondering like, is that person projecting, or is there a blind spot in here? And
Yeah.
like, because here's the thing, there are layers to it all, especially because it's darkness essentially. So it's gonna be fucking really hard to build night vision and adjust to that, and see it. So like you're trying to see it, and you're just like, hey, maybe you have night vision, but maybe you're also a hater ass bitch, and I don't need to fucking listen to you. And you
Yeah.
have to kind of you go back and forth with that. There have been times where I'm like, well, actually, the truth is it's both. It's
Yeah.
all intertwined. It's both things are true at the same time. And it's to absorb all the lessons of that experience and all the potential perspectives or potential wisdoms that such an experience could give. And that's why, like in art, you can interpret it millions of different ways, and every individual gets a different lesson. Every story is going to draw in different lessons based off of your relationship to the symbolism within it. And it could be as something as subtle as the color, the way the person talks, like the aesthetic, or it could be something even deeper of the principle of that archetype just
Mm.
gets to you in one way or another. Whenever, and you have to know that about yourself. You have to know your personal relationship to your external world, and then weigh out what is the best decision for yourself ultimately. But that does not mean that you don't owe people things, because yes, I am the monster in your story, but what's a monster to you is a friend to me. And like you can see that in different, like a very simple way. In like America, we have deep relationships with dogs that foreigners don't understand. That's something I'm learning in Nashville that blows my mind. Kind of pisses me off a little bit because I just to be a judgmental hater that I am, I feel like it is incredibly unevolved for you to be that terrified of a dog in America. If you move to America, you have this understanding. You know that Americans do this. It's like it's a phenomena to have that the Western world has these domesticated pets and these kind of deep emotional, maybe even like to a degree parasocial. Like we don't know how real, to an extent. There's arguments there, and how real these relationships are with the spirit of this animal. But it's also an indigenous practice of Native America, like Native Americans, like those indigenous tribes. And if you go into paganism, it's actually been all over the world, these deep connections. So you see the disconnection, especially particularly in Asian countries where they are, because as they move to America, they just can't fathom you having a dog as a pet. But then in the like Chinese or Asian zodiac, there is a dog. So it's like, you know what I mean? Like what layer are people on in society? Where are they disconnected from nature and these spiritual principles? And you can see how it's a complex conversation because like I'm having to generalize, but that doesn't mean like all Asian people, because I've met other Asian people who are super excited. Like they love my dogs and they're like, oh, I'm so excited to be in America where we can connect with dogs in this way. And I want to learn how to connect with a dog the way that I see you connecting with your dog. Like this really cute girl, she was like, you're their alpha. And it's just so cute. And they're so well behaved. And she was so excited, but she's like, I've never had a dog before. But then there was this guy yesterday who started being a creeper and videotaping me and recording, like taking photos of me with my dogs off leash because I don't think it's fair to make dogs shit on a leash necessarily. Like they're not
Oh yeah,
bothering
yeah.
anybody. Like I had the leashes. I'm in control of my dogs. Why you think I would be so stupid to let untrained dogs off a leash? I don't get. Like, it's just like, to me, it's common sense that if I'm going to be having my dogs off leash in this way, that they are trustworthy to do so. But also, stupid people do that all the time. So, like, I'm being judged because of the ignorance or stupidity or whatever of others. And that's where society gets friction. And that's what makes it really hard. Again, how do you coexist with people? And spirituality kind of connects in all of those complexities of paradox. And, like, again, judgments, where there is a stereotype for a reason in a cultural representation, but there's also a spectrum. You see everywhere. We're talking about these spectrums of things, and that's the law of polarity. That's the paradox of the universe, and that the only reason we have comparisons is because there are opposites, which everyone says opposites attract. You have to have that to stabilize. Like atoms, they have to, you know what I mean? We're molecules. You see I'm just picturing a lot of things.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah. Yeah, well, and it's it is crazy too, like because every choice has a consequence and every action has a reaction. And like when you start to I guess going back to that, like when you start to develop who you are in your mind, like there's consequences for like the decisions that you make about what you want to do, who you want to be, how you want to portray yourself as. But then one day you might have to go back and be like, well, some of this has to change. Like some of this has to break down again for me to like morph into someone else that I have to be in order to take this next step in my evolution as a person, right? And that's like it's not a comfortable experience. Um, so
well,
what
it's
like so like what would you say? So I like what you said when you were like knowing why, knowing why like you do the things you do, who you are, stuff like that. And then you can understand how, like how to address it, how to move forward with it, and how to, how to maintain that, how to, operate in that different way moving forward. And a big part of that for me was that birth chart that you made. Because I was
really.
like, yeah, that was huge. It's just like, okay, now I understand why I do the things I do. You know what I mean? How I am as like, what are my tendencies and what has that led to? And how have I compensated for that? And
Yeah,
so,
well, oh, sorry.
oh yeah, no, sorry. So breaking that down was the hugest part of it. It's like, now I know why. And then that led, you ask why within that. Well, why have I responded in the way that I have? Why did I do the things I did? Why do I act the way I do? Whatever it is, now you understand why, and now you know what to look out for. And that was, man, that was a huge part of it.
Yeah, so the next step from that, because a lot, like, so not you, but one thing I've noticed, because that's like a common out, like people are kind of awakened to that understanding. Like a lot of people are doing therapy to an extent. You see this reflection of how we were raised. Like there's a whole culture or generations of kids, essentially, or young adults, adults with childlike minds. Like people feel stunted. People kind of feel a state of immaturity, and they're reflecting on how they were raised. They like we feel neglected, and you can see the shift of like parental structures, awareness, and all of those things. So a lot of people are figuring out why. But then you get so there's more of an ego layer there. So that's the spiritual narcissism or the academia narcissism. You see it in a lot of pompous rich people. Like there's that I think I'm better than you. And so like they don't see their parents as human beings anymore who are product of their generation, who regardless of how horrific they were, to an extent they did the best they could with what they had, with their lifeline. And so holding space, kind of hate that phrase, but to sit in a state of meditation, of perspective, of empathy, of the consciousness of an abuser, that's a deeper level of shadow work that we need, that human beings have proven to not be able to hold because they don't think that that's justice. And empathizing, they think it's kind of sick and twisted that you would empathize with an abuser in any way, shape, or form. It's like, but you have to understand that that person got that way somehow. And then it's like, well, okay, well, hey, here's the thing. Let's argument's sake, it's a nature versus nurture like argument. If it's a natural occurrence, why would nature manifest this like psychopath? What purpose? Because nature tends to create with intention, and human beings. This is part of like the connection to fitness. It's fun. They've disconnected themselves from nature in a variety of ways. This ties to my shower. I'm so excited. So, because then the ancient myth with Tiamat and Marduk, it's the Sumerian myth, but there's multiple myths where you have this masculine patriarchal figure that slays a dragon or a beast, which is typically the feminine chaos nature. And people have it wrong. You're not supposed to conquer it, okay? It's not, so there's like the Greek myth, but it's not the same like gender association, but it's like, because Gaia is, and then there's like, I think it's chaos. I don't think I'm saying his name right. I think it's pronounced different, but I think it's chaos that it's like lays on top of Gaia. Like there's that, and that's how like Earth is created. But anyway, so there's still this masculine like air pressure force that connects with Gaia that creates the sphere. Essentially,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
know I'm not going through the myth, but I'm like connecting the symbolism. So there's this understanding that you conquer nature, and that is what we have been living in, and that is a misinterpretation, that is a psychosis, that is a brainwashing of enslavement. That's the matrix. All of these negative conditionings, the toxic masculinity, the toxic femininity, this like imbalance in our societies, because women or nature blossoms, surrenders, unfolds, and creates for, you know what I mean, like it's for balance, essentially for harmony there. So if a negative entity essentially is manifesting, it is to counterbalance something else. And so if we want to limit the level of intensity of the shadow, you have to bring in that awareness, but also the brighter the light, the greater the shadow. So there's that contrast of accepting that for us to have the greatest good of the good, we have to have the worst of the worst. So like in a spiritual perspective, you have to go through the tunnels of Set or the clip-off, etc. All of these other left-hand path principles, these shadows, you go deep into your unconscious, and you don't conquer the beast. You don't conquer chaos, you work with chaos. So when you're talking about the how, or you learn the why, and then from there, you get to decide what you slay and what you become friends with. Now, or how do you use this as a skill in your favor that makes you and the society happy? So your will, God's will, friends, you become like one with one another, you're integrated, and like, yeah, I'm kind of a compassionate, provocative, offensive person, but it comes with a purpose, and I know that if I said something offensively, it wasn't out of a state of ego, wasn't out of a state of maliciousness. I've really sat with, when I say certain things with conviction, there, I need to say it and I kind of need to stand on it, but I've also learned when that gets out of control and I like, hey, you know what? I still stand on what I said because of I know where it came from, but I also understand that that really wasn't the best way that I want to present myself and coexist in this community. I don't want there to be conflict without a resolution. So we need to like reel it back in and understand like this is what we're arguing about or this is the problem. It's not me versus you, it's us against the problem. And that's not just like a marriage advice. That is like relationship advice to literally everything that you do or talk to or associate with in your existence.
Yeah, yeah, that's crazy. That's crazy too. Like, yeah, all those things that you uncover in that shadow work.
Well, it's not so it's like because like people and it's not easy. That's where like I think a lot of mental illness comes from, and this can be like a controversial thing because like I want it to also be understood that like I'm not ungrounded, and there is like a if you have like mental health problems, seek professional help. Like I hate disclaimers because like it's duh. It's kind of my perspective. Like this is a spiritual perspective, but if the spirit don't force the spiritual perspective to fit there, you know, like not everything is like is a cult, you know. There go see a doctor if you need it or whatever, but like or have like someone help you integrate. And that's where I think like maybe people don't feel that they can't like because a lot of the holistic community wellness they don't feel like they can go to people especially because big pharma like you there's so many weird things that have uncovered so then people don't feel safe to go to physicians so then they go like the more holistic path not realizing that there's a you need both.
And then you don't
It's
know who
not
to trust.
and then you don't know who to trust because then like the spiritual community the holistic community is also a bunch of quacks everyone is ungrounded. Like, and so you're doing your best. And I think that's all people can kind of do is like, well, do your best, like, think about it, talk about it, don't act impulsively. Um, it's like, hey, like, I didn't want to get the COVID vaccine right away, but I wasn't saying it wasn't good. I just wanted to wait. And then guess what? I'm glad I waited. You know what I mean? But like people at first were like, I'm not getting it because like it's not real. It's like, well, no, I think that their vaccines can work. I think they have worked. I think that there's some fuckery in the scientific community with vaccines that needs to be cleaned up. And I think we need to come from a place of pure intention of wellness and not a sci-fi movie because that's what it's. I'm like, what is like? You guys are just like have all this money and you're just doing all these crazy experiments that have no purpose for the like the planet. Again, nature for the entirety. It's like it's gonna benefit a small group that isn't like because they say sacrifice for the greater good. That greater good, like the destruction you have to go through for that greater good, it has to be like a noble again it's light so you know what I mean it has to be of this pure unegotist it's not gonna work every great leader that came from a place of self or like essentially self-destruction ego or became corrupted to like everyone starts off with pure intention, I think. Like, I think people get lost in the sauce pretty easy. And you can see that in the complexity of their character. It's like, well, this guy was a stand up guy. I could never picture him doing that. And then another person is like, oh, no, I knew he would be that way because it does, like, it's like, well, true.
You're
Like,
both
yeah,
true.
the, no one's lying except the people who are lying.
Yeah, it is. Well, it's like, too, like just at the end of the day, it feels like just take responsibility for yourself. Like, just take responsibility for your own, I mean, your own everything. Like, we talked about health and wellness. Like, take responsibility and learn. And if you don't know, like, find someone you trust and learn for yourself. Don't neglect it. But then I think that same thing applies with your healing and self-awareness as well too, because like it's getting tougher and tougher to become more self-aware and to understand like what needs to be improved within ourselves because we're so distracted, right? Like if uncovering what needs improved, health or healing psychologically whatever is uncomfortable, then your natural tendency is going to be to avoid it. And if it gets easier and easier to avoid it, then naturally, without thinking about it, people are going to get more, they're going to avoid it more and more. And then the less self-aware you get, you know, the less you are able to take control of your health, things like that. And then it just kind of spirals from there. And then you start to point fingers like, well, this person's fault, that person's fault, this abuser's fault, this, this person's fault, this doctor's fault, whatever it is. But I think it all started with just making sure that we have a strong desire to work through that ourselves first.
Well, yeah, I think so. Like there is like this shift of like individualism to an extent, and kind of also reconnect, because people used to have multiple skills, and then it kind of seemed like people, well, that's oh sorry, that's like complicated.
It is. Well, that's crazy to think
Okay, well, so
about.
no, here, because like, so here, okay, so essentially, it's rich people of the past that had free time. They focused on multiple skills. So they played multiple instruments, they painted. Like, you think of a royal, they had all these other skills. But then at the more poverty level, you had people who your family, your bloodline had a trade. And so, like, you were a blacksmith, and that's where your last name kind of came from. And then there were people who were cobblers, or like, like, everyone had their role. But then people at the top got to kind of expand their role into more creative avenues. And so, technology was supposed to not just do that for like the rich, which I guess maybe that's just a mirroring. It's always been that way. You have to reach this standard of luxury of wealth in order to receive the ability to have these skills. But then there's like hidden talent in poverty, like, and then so you wonder all of those conspiracy theories of what's the point of it. And so I think, like, while we try to set up a system that allows people that hero's journey essentially to rise to the top, like, you can see how society is kind of structured in this adversarial, cinematic, cosmic joke. However, the evolution side of it is that everyone has access to it because we've created an environment that we can trust who's in charge. Like, if you are a blacksmith, I should be able to trust that you are the top of your trade and that is your role. Like, but at the same time, I would hope that you chose it from a state of passion and alignment rather than enslavement and force, because I don't think unhappy enslaved people do a good job.
Yeah.
Unless they somehow have convinced themselves that that is what, like, that's just them making the best of it, but deep down they're not happy. And I say that from someone who kind of felt that in my own way. Like, I went this whole medical path and reached a standard of society that was acceptable, while also struggling with like an identity of who I felt and wanted to be. Again, like that inner monologue, that inner world not matching the outer world. And that's like a reflection of everything you kind of see around you. And like you see it in TV. Like there's, what is it? Where they have the innies and the outies at work. Whatever, there's a show about it. And like no one's inner world is matching their outer world. And again, it's the disconnection from nature. It's the division of everything, the separatism, not embracing the individual in a collective sense. It's like, it's all of these like hoops. And it's like, but we have the technology, we have the abundance to allow everyone to fit their role. And actually, that would be a healthier environment for everyone. And that would keep things circulating. So if we're snuffing that, nature would manifest something horrific to ultimately get rid of the problem. So we have, okay, conspiracy time is that psychopaths are manifesting because of society, and that way nature is like, hey, if we create this psychopath, eventually they'll create nuclear war, blow up all the humans, and we can start over and get rid of this infestation because they're not doing their job. Humans were ultimately created to be guardians of nature and to nurture nature and to keep us evolving, and they are devolving us. Something like we're obviously sick. There's obviously not something good going on here within the human structure and how we're connecting to nature. You see it in everything that like people fear about. You wonder why everyone's in a state of psychosis and mental illness and unwellness. We can't trust anyone who to talk to. We can't guide ourselves outside of what we know, and we don't even know if what we know is real because there's so much propaganda and illusion everywhere. So what we need is people, because like so institutions like college, that used to be a standard or critique that if you took the time and spent the money to get this degree, I could trust that you are going to do right by me and I can have that mental load. Again, so that's a feminine thing. Taking off the mental load of nature to keep it going. So your worst person in society speaks more volumes than your best person of society. So if your worst person in society is on drugs, educated, homeless, in a state of psychosis, you failed them. Now, there are people who choose that life. They do that to themselves, and that's a different topic. But there are a lot of people who are failed because no matter what they did, they couldn't. It's like buttering the ladder. You have a ladder to heaven, and they put fucking oil on it, and they're laughing at you while you slide down it.
You know, it's crazy when you were saying that, I thought about something because you're anti GP chat AI chat GPT.
Yes,
And I've been reading these
I don't
articles.
know. In ways.
Yeah, in ways. Um
I just there need the boundaries. I'm a Saturn person. Okay, boundaries are very helpful.
yeah, and what's crazy is because I went through a phase where I was leveraging it quite a bit. And then I found its limitations, right? Now I'm like aware of like what it can and can't do and I'm like, okay, I could use it for this, but know what to look out for and I would never use it for that, whatever it is. But I've been reading a lot of articles where people are driven into, so it's two sides of a coin. People who use technology for like their own psychology, specifically AI, it has helped a lot of people out of like really depressive states and really interesting like bad states because it's something to talk to. Like in a world where you have like because people generally and I don't know how this has changed because it's hard to reference because we're old enough now to be aware of certain things. So I don't know if it's just different because I'm older or if it's different because society it's different. But like people don't really want to hear about your shit because people have a lot of shit. So we're like, oh, I don't want to hear about like everything you have to work through because I've got enough my own shit to work through, so I don't want to hear about it. And then so and a lot of people do that, and so you're like, well, now who do I talk to? I don't know who I can talk to. So people go to like GPT's AIs, and talk to them. And by nature, GPT and AI, it props you up. Now there's a problem with that, and that's a whole nother conversation. But it's like it will always tell you you're right in a lot of cases, like unless it's super dangerous. But it's like, hey, I'm going through this, and it's like, you know what? Your feelings are valid. What you did was good. Blah blah blah. And in that way, it does help people out of those scenarios. However, on the other side, I've read
Generate
articles.
psychosis.
Yeah, in other situations, like I read one article the other day. It was like this guy with autism, a level of autism, I believe it was, and he got so deep down this psychosis with this AI that he convinced himself that his mom was like out to get him.
Been
And
there, just kidding. Just
and
kidding.
I'm not like
Oh,
and
did he
he
like
was
kill her?
far left field. Like he had convinced himself so heavily that like everything that she wanted to do was totally against anything I don't know. I couldn't explain to you. And now I don't know whether like he harmed her in any way or if he was going to, but they caught on either before and after there was an alleged harming. And they found out that he had driven himself into this psychosis because he had talked with GPT and with that nature that it has of like, yeah, you're right. You know what? You've got a point, blah, 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 blah. And he went deep down that rabbit hole, like, and it drove him nuts. And there's multiple, like, I'm reading more and more of both sides of those coins. It's crazy too. And I've been like, cause I'm dating now, right? And so I'm like talking, there's
Sorry.
there's girls I've talked with that are like, I use GPT to get me out of like horrible breakups or, making them like working through whatever healing that needs to happen post breakup, whatever it is. Like that's becoming more and more common. So that's interesting. And then reading online about how, okay, there are like kids in high school getting themselves through like suicidal situations because they have someone to talk to. Like, okay, so these are like, that's one side of the coin. But then on the other, how driven into psychosis you could get. Because one, I've tested it myself. Like, I'm like, okay, what do you think about this? Yes, 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 you're right. And I'm like, why would you ever say that? This is why you're wrong. And it's like, oh, yeah, actually, you're right. But if you never questioned it, you would be way down that rabbit hole. So it's kind of crazy to think about that. Not only are we offloading certain tasks, like it seems like if you want to do anything, like you need an accountant, you need a social media manager, you want help with sales, you want help with health and fitness, you want help with writing a book, you know what I mean? It seems like the now everywhere there's always like a coach, a course, a mentorship, anything. So you're like, people are offloading every one of those skills, almost flipped. Like you said, the royals, it's almost the opposite. Now the people, in the poverty state, like they have their whatever job it is to get them by, but then they're like offloading every last little skill down to even their own psychology with an AI, which is crazy to think about.
Okay, so I know I had a lot of judgmental faces.
Oh, I couldn't tell.
Well, no, it's okay. So I started to become aware of myself. I was like, oh, this, I don't have a poker face.
Well, and because I know how you feel about the TV, which is why it's fun to talk about that, because like you are far enough removed from it. If I have conversations with my friends who use it pretty often, there's a little bit of a denial because they're using it.
Well, okay, so the whole time I wanted to just scream, the chat GBT is dime bagging everybody, dime bag Daryl, because here's the thing, we don't fucking need AI to make people fucking come up with these thoughts and harm people. That happened to dime bag before our very eyes. Like,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
so
whoever,
devastating.
yeah,
Like,
exactly.
so
The dude who killed Dimebag, that was psychosis.
well, but that's what's happening. And so that ties into spiritual psychosis that people are experiencing through psychedelics and improper psychedelic therapy, which is where I firmly believe in like experts and guides. I think that you have to go through a level of training. And
For
again, that's
sure.
where I was talking about like like college used to mean that I could trust you. Your degree, things used to mean things. Your word, titles meant something. And we're kind of in this understanding that people are manipulating and corrupting their titles for egomaniacal, kind of weirdly insane, like us versus you, like again, almost sci-fi movie or conspiratorial. Like it feels weird. Like why are we doing this to each other as like a species on top of a like a living life form on the planet? It's not like we're just hunting animals for sustenance to like survive in a balanced way, because if you don't hunt, then that population can, you know what I mean? Like there's healthy ways to balance the ecosystem that nature naturally implements in a variety of ways.
And
That
then you
there
have
aren't,
AI that's like the opposite.
yeah. And so like what I mean is like people aren't questioning things. They're not staying grounded to it. And my whole main thing is like people, so if people can have psychosis without technology, then that means that they can achieve what they're using technology for without technology. And okay, not to sound like a fucking boomer or a grandma or anything fucking stupid that I can hear stupid fucking people telling me, because I'm so against this thing, but this is what the Unabomber in a nutshell was talking about is you have to learn how to longhand division first, and then you use your calculator. Our teachers told us that, and you know what? I hated them for it. Okay? I'm not going to say I didn't, but I understand why they did that. And oops, sorry, that was probably annoying. I specifically, in my spiritual path, graciously have been forced into having to learn how to do everything in these
Long
spiritual
division.
principle ways, long division. And I have had attitude the whole way through. And I get super mad because I'm like, why did that person get a shortcut? And it's like, because you're stubborn now. Here.
Hmm.
And
Well,
it's for all,
what's the reaction, right? Like, what are they shortcutting, and then what comes from that?
well,
Because
yeah,
like,
so
talk about
there's
blindsides, right?
exactly. And then, well, then I understand why. Not this. I don't like how this sounds sometimes, but people will be like, I don't see why people are impressed sometimes Because like to me, I'm in the perspective of I'm in the shit, this is hard, and I'm not even close to like I have, you know, you've heard me talk about me too, like I have such a pressure. I'm a pressure cooker. I'm high strung. I'm not chill, and I have like a standard of perfectionism that I don't think is genuinely possible. I really don't think that like Da Vinci, any of these great minds, like I don't like nobody. But I'm constantly striving for such a legacy. I have that. And in my astrology, it's funny enough that it's kind of written there. It's been there my whole life. It's actually been something that has helped me and hurt me in a variety of ways. And I think that both of those were learning experiences for me to keep cultivating whatever it is that is my purpose of living. Like, why was I created? And I think when people are looking for, like, who am I? Why do I do what I do? I think that's ultimately the question they're asking is, like, what was I made for? Like, why am I a creation? Why do I exist? And that gets into Mary Shelley and like Frankenstein. It's like that deep introspection. And once you've made peace with that answer and you can embody yourself, but here's the thing, that there are going to be people who conclude that their purpose is for destruction. And there is a level of validity to that. I do think that there are, for a prime example, men who are born to be warrior archetypes. I think that there's a reason for that. However, I think that we have lost the nobility and what it meant to be a knight, a samurai, a warrior, etc. Like there
You
were
have to fight for
rules.
something, right? You have to fight for a list of values and honors. It's like you got to know what those are first.
However, so on the flip side, have all of these noble principles actually just been propaganda, and has propaganda existed since the beginning of time? Because are you actually fighting for a noble cause? There are a lot of people who think that they are, and
Mm,
they're not.
yeah, yeah.
Because they don't, and here's the thing, none of us know. None of us know the truth. The only truth that we absolutely know, inevitably, is death. I know you will die. I know I will die at some point. I don't know how. I don't know when. I can't know anything else. I don't know if Trump is the answer. I don't know if Kamala is the answer. I don't know if Putin's a good guy because he looks really cute with some jaguars. I don't know if Hitler was right because look at what's going on in Israel now. We don't know anything. We could have been lied to the whole time. And people are starting to really question this, which is connected to like the age of Aquarius. People are asking radical questions because we have been lied to. And with that implosion, that tower moment of destruction, if we are going to rebuild without destroying ourselves, we have to try to find a standard of critique of expertise, sorry, for people to lead the next level of society in a state of pure intention that is going to, again, our worst member of society is going to be a reflection of the nurturing of our environment, the nutrients. We obviously have ridden the earth of its nutrient soil. That is a literal and metaphorical thing that we can experience. And how do you replenish it? Well, a lot of people have to die because you need those nutrients to go back into the earth. So that's a real thing, all right? Like that's a horrific shadow nature perspective that I was just talking about. Why would nature manifest horrific things? Well, we depleted the soil. How does soil get nutrients? It is through decaying corpses of a variety of organisms. We cannot deny our humanity.
And it's crazy because we're like we're like in the process of like trying to transcend that. Pretty much. You're like
Sorry.
every action has a reaction and nature has reaction.
Nature
And
will win
things like
every
that.
time. Like that,
And
and
then
not
it's
to
like
get. Oh,
now
sorry.
we're like using technology to try and overcome whatever reaction that is. Like leave Earth.
Well, yeah, it's
It's
the
crazy.
inevitability, and then that kind of goes into cycles. Like you repeat generational cycles. So there's the theory that we're trying to go back to Mars, that we actually came from Mars. That's a perspective out there.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, and that goes into the planetary perspective that the sun bursts planets. And so eventually, Earth would get to a point where we are too far away from the sun to have the life that we have now, and then Venus would have that, and then Mercury, and then there would be more planet, and it would keep getting pushed out until whatever, like, an inevitability, infinity, blah 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 blah, all this stuff. So the understanding is this a natural part of evolution for us to, because we're being pushed away from the sun, or are we being pushed away from the sun because of our actions, that we're creating this environment where the sun is like, fuck, I gotta push Earth away from me. You know what I mean? Like, does that make sense? And
Yeah.
so it's like, okay, goodbye, let's start over. Because, like, in the same kind of thing. So we're repeating cycles instead of breaking the cycle and sustaining this fucking gift that we have.
So
You
what
know,
would you? Yeah. So what would
so
you
it's kind
say?
of like
Like,
Wally. If you've seen Wally, there's like metaphors in
oh,
Wally
Wally, I
in
remember
that.
that. That's such an old movie.
Yeah, that underrated movie. People didn't listen.
So as like as we're taking responsibility for our own healing and our own progressing and our own like be better for ourselves so we can be better for everybody else. Like what, like for me, I told you like the birth chart was a big part of that.
Sorry, this just blows my mind. I think that that's so cool to hear because
Yeah, it's like it's
I was
huge
so
for
nervous
self-awareness.
about it. I'm so nervous
Yeah.
every time I do one.
It's like yeah. And it's like the more you can know about yourself, the more you know the why and then the how. Um, but just for like anyone who is like, you know what, I know I have some things that I'm like distracting myself from. Like, what do you feel like is the first step that someone should take for that like awareness and improvement?
Okay, what do I think people should do,
Yeah,
or what did
like the
I
first
do?
step, like the first step.
Okay.
Yeah. And probably not what you did, because right, like unless you would recommend it. Usually, when I do
Um.
shit, I'm like, okay, you're gonna do a bunch of not what I did.
Well, yeah. So like I said, I learned things the hard way. I have to learn things the hard way. I don't think that an easy lesson is in my future ever in my life.
But if you're gonna make it easy, if you were gonna tell someone like, what is, what I mean, this is how I do it. This is how I would start that.
Okay. Well, okay, so I get the way to start it. It's gonna be very specific in the sense that as soon as you, this is gonna be kind of a weird moment, but as soon as you realize that you're even having that thought that like something's wrong, like as soon as you're doing that, write it down or like acknowledge it externally somehow.
Yeah, yeah,
I don't always think, it depends on your support system. This could be an understanding that I didn't feel safe to go to someone immediately and say, hey, things aren't cool right now.
I think that's really common too. Like,
Right. I think, but just generally speaking, even
especially
if you
now.
have a good support system, I think it's pride. Because a lot of people in society, right, your tribe, you have to put on a mask, you have to be a certain way. And like you said, people don't really want to hear about your problems because they have their own problems. And like, listen, my problem, like, have some perspective. It could be worse. Like, you hear all the things all the
Yeah,
time, every time you're genuinely going through something, and it's like okay, I have to do with this. I have to self parent, and that's because again I feel like a lot of us didn't get that as children, and I think it's because our parents didn't have the time. It all stems back to how we let parents and families operate, that I think we're all fucked up. And it gets into a lot of other arguments on like how the family unit should be structured. And it's not a gender thing. It's literally as long as one parent can stay home and make sure the kid is getting what they need for their vital years, like home and not in an institution, like there's so like we can do this. It's really not that hard. We know where we're going. Um, but again, to redirect, people don't care. And so I think people, again, that's self-awareness. Like, I don't think that that's, a lot of people will be like, no, man, like, that's just a lie. And then you're like, yeah, because here's the thing. I was going through a really hard time where it became so fucking obvious. My self-destructive behavior was so obvious that it was an obligation for my family to say, hey, I think you need to go find God and go get therapy.
hmm
Okay. Now, here's the thing. What I mean by obligation is I don't think that they would have said anything if I would have, you know what I mean? It was like, hey, if we don't say something, it looks bad on us for not saying something. So we're going to say something. They didn't, here's how I know they didn't care, is because when I started going to therapy and doing all the therapeutic things, and I started finding God and who God really is, and understanding my own personal relationship with God, the universe, spirituality, insert, etc., like, they shunned me. And I was like, oh, you never really cared. Because you can't confront this, because if you like, because of what I'm mirroring to you, and then because again in a family setting you start to get into the genetics, the different dynamics, how the inner child affected it, how your past affected it, trauma, like the all of these things that society doesn't all give us the tools or the time to process. And that's not blaming anyone or like demonizing anybody. Like, I try talking about this, and a lot of people in a lot of public spaces too, like you'll hear it in a lot of therapeutic spaces, they demonize the mother or the father, or and then the parent reacts like, and then the parent kind of makes an ass out of themselves because they're reacting, because it's like, well, no, here's the thing, any sane person is going to react to being demonized. That's here's the thing, whether you're a narcissist or not, people don't like being demonized in a public setting. And like anything that I talk about, I really want it to be understood that this is coming from a place of healing and empathy. Like, I see my family as the imperfectly perfect people that they are. And I've come to understand that for them to be their best selves, we don't have the relationship that I might dream of having with a sibling or a mom. It's like, actually, okay, you know what? I understand. This is who I am. This is who you are. And it's not good chemistry, which is kind of difficult to accept when they're your bloodline. And so again, I think that that gets really hard for people to like, who do I talk to, especially if they come from a place of being misunderstood in the family, or then like, because then like if you tell someone, then they sometimes you mandatory reporters. Well, if I talk to somebody, they have to report to someone else. So if you go to a school, you go to your school counselor, and you say you're suicidal, to an extent, there's like a mandatory report that they have to file to put you on a watch, depending on how serious they're going to take you. And they're either going to take you super seriously or not seriously at all, and both extremes don't help the situation. One extreme is going to an involuntary unit and kind of being paraded around like this super depressed emo freak. And then on the other side, they don't take you seriously and you go through with it, and then they martyr you all over the school like they ever gave a fuck about you, and they never did. Like, there's so many kids in my high school that killed themselves, and that was when people finally cared, which is ultimately what the person wanted, was for someone to care, which is why a lot of people go to certain extremes. So if you're in those situations where you can't talk to somebody, writing it down, externalizing it, even just to yourself, can be a release. And that's where, like, when it comes to witchcraft or magic, on a atheistic, logical, engineer, non-woo-woo perspective, it's placebo effect of these psychological healing principles of just acknowledgement and self-awareness. So then you wrote it down. It's not something you can bury in your subconscious. It's nothing you can shut down. It's nothing you can mime your way through. You fucking wrote it down. Someone could find it. Okay, what do they say? Don't take pictures, don't write anything down, and deny, deny, deny. If you're trying to get away with something, you're trying to pretend that you're a happy person who's not suicidal, who's doing A-okay because you're a strong human being and feelings are for the weak, and you have to, like, da 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 da, all the things that you're told all the time, because you got to be successful. You don't have time to have a freak out because you're just whatever. You know what I mean? Like, oh, I'm sorry, you're trying to process your rape. Doesn't matter. Why were you wearing that? This and that. It's all your fault. Deal with it by yourself. Yes, you're a victim. Yes, something happened to you, but ultimately you got to deal with it. So deal with it by yourself. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, gotcha. So
Okay.
like writing it down, definitely the first step.
Well, yeah, just some form of acknowledgement, but like like in witchcraft, that's one of the fucking first spells you're gonna read in any beginner novel of shadow work. It's journaling and acknowledging that. But I know not a lot of people are like journalists in that sense. Like, they don't like that. So, like, whatever it is that you kind of need to do, sometimes it is carving it into a candle and burning it, and like just even taking a moment to envision that it's leaving you. It's not going to go away, by the way. Like that's a first step thing, and that's like an energetic cleansing thing. But kind of once you like start to do those things, that's opening the door. And that's where a lot of people will revert to Christianity after they open up these principles, is because they can't sit in that darkness of like, well, like for, okay, so like suicide's a good example of like some deep, we're talking, because we're talking about shadow work, right? So these are the darker aspects of humans' mental health. So suicide, sexual assault, all of these other things, like these are common, horrific, dark things that really keep people in a state of poverty in every sense of the word, like all of it. Well, it's like, well, why are you suicidal? Where did that come from? And then you may not be happy with what you find out. There were so many things that I had to go back and reflect upon, that I was like, I made a conscious decision to change the story to make appearances better than to acknowledge what happened to me. So, and that is a self-betrayal. That's usually where people get stuck, is once they get, like, because it's real easy to be like, well, this guy assaulted me, like the patriarchy, this toxic masculine, which is a problem in itself. But you get lost in trying to, because you're trying to fix yourself by fixing that bigger problem. So you can't do, like, that is a, you're like going from step 1 to step 12. And no, step 12 is like bringing in awareness and healing on a collective scale, but you have to heal yourself first. And you see people who don't, and then they end up drowning in a variety of different things. And that's usually where you can have like kind of corrupt problems where that started in good virtue. You know what I mean? Like, they had a good intention, but because they didn't heal themselves, then their subconscious and unconscious mind was acting out of anger. So it's those shitty thoughts that you have that don't quite make sense, where it's like, well, she was only like a good, like, these are weird things. Like, just to be very honest about it, like, you'll hear, it's like, well, you know what? You were only assaulted at a party. You were raped because you were drunk at a party. That's nothing. I was kidnapped and bound, and they went more extreme with me. So you don't deserve, like, and it's like, wait. We were both assaulted, and you can't compare suffering. But because people compare suffering, then they alienate people in their own community that you should be working with. And that's where the division, and sometimes it seems like it is orchestrated to keep people in a state of fear, to keep people in a state of competition and all of those other things. But really what I think it is it's just cycles repeating, which is where you have like pedophilia is usually cycle repeating. It was done to them as a kid, so then they do it to children. And like, there's a lot of so bringing in that awareness, because then you have to realize like where you have to stop repeating the cycle, because you are repeating it, even if it's on a small scale. You could be repeating it on a big scale or a small scale, and it doesn't matter the scale, it sucks. When you realize where you have been playing into these traumatic things, it does not feel good. And then you also have to apologize, like, to an extent, you should apologize for it. If you want to, like, that's like the forgiveness side of it. Like, that's true accountability, is it's not just, because people think, well, I acknowledged it for myself, I don't need to acknowledge it publicly. It's like, well, no, once you acknowledge it publicly in a genuinely grounded, again, steps. So you want to acknowledge it publicly, but once you're from a more healed, grounded, kind of indifferent place where it's no longer guiding you. But if it's guiding your emotions and kind of adding ripples to your wave, your pool, then maybe don't speak on it publicly, because again, you're gonna put your foot in your mouth or like something crazy. And then, but also to transmute that, sometimes those cataclysms happen for a bigger scheme of healing for the collective. Like, people are made examples out of sometimes, and it's not always a negative thing. It can suck to be the face of that example, But like if you do what you're supposed to do, you then create big generational change in a culture. And that is where, like, celebrities and like their PR systems, it's not working anymore because you're sweeping things under the rug. And at this point, it's like, no, let me just be who you are. I can detach your art from who you are as a person, but it's also breaking these parasocial relationships, which is a part of propaganda in the sense of people present themselves the way that they want to be seen, not the way that they are.
Yeah. So that first step, like write it down, journal it. I mean, one that's
Sorry,
huge.
did that all tie together?
No, yeah, yeah, yeah. And
Okay.
then like, because when you write stuff down, you have to admit things. You can't
Yeah.
journal about yourself without admitting things. I think that's why it gets to be pretty tough. But then beyond that, it's like, then do a birth chart from Sarah.
Yeah, okay. If you are in a place where you can accept criticism, that is when you should talk to me. That is kind of what I've learned. Is I think that there are people I've either personally assumed they were on a different step or level than they were because of how they present themselves, or maybe even they thought they could. And this is like when people get into these practices, again, that awareness of when people say that it's brutal, it's not brutal in this like horror movie kind of way. It's brutal in like emotional, like cognitive, mental suffering. That's kind of inexplainable of like, why am I this distraught and tortured by a thought, an energetic frequency? And that is where you get into the more occult side of things with like demons or all of that. And like there's a lot of theories that demons are just names of energetic cognitive frequencies of your unconscious and subconscious mind, so they're representations of you. So again, your association with wrath, which would be a demon, that'd be Asmodeus, is demon of wrath and lust. Your manifestation of that is going to be your association with that, and how you like, and it's like how tedious that those demonic energies, how low they can go, essentially, because you won't realize where your ego is falling victim or being ruled by this demon lord, on such a subtle level. Like, I don't know how to really, like, you will be amazed at how little of energetic effort it takes to ripple the water, right? So little flirty interactions, like sin of lust that could be sabotaging you in a way that you don't even know. It's like someone slowly poisoning you with arsenic or cyanide until eventually you die. Now, there are people who build a tolerance to that, and it's not harmful, and it's fun, and it's fine, and it's because, again, the demonic integration, the relationship with the demon has become sustainable. If it's not, that's where you get these possessions. So then it's like, okay, here's the thing: if you are like beaten to death with Christian theology, you know the names of the demons. Okay, so then if you are, especially a lot of women, it's usually sexually related because of how much they suppress the sexual nature of the feminine. And so then they get possessed by a usually sexually driven demonic energy. It's like, what's your name? What's your name? And then they voice the name. Hello? That person psychologically knows the name because you beat the theology into them. You told them that this demon of lust was going to eat them in their sleep, or whatever you told them was going to happen. And so they had a sexual dream, they had a sexual urge, they had a natural biological reaction of a human being that's a sexual being. And no, oh God, now I have so much guilt, so much shame. So then the demons, the demonic energy of guilt and shame overtakes you to where then you become possessed because you're weakened. So then you become possessed, and then you start acting out and doing all these crazy things because you're a monster. And if I'm a monster, what do monsters do? That's where you get, again, levels of psychosis of people doing like, well, this demon, I needed to kill this child in the name of this demon. No, demons don't want children. You know, and it's like, no, like that, no, 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 like that's not what that is. And so then another step is like healing your, again, your association with these principles. It depends on, like, I guess it depends on what the trauma is, on, like, again, where you start, because like these are things you're going to find out. Oh, I'm suicidal because, well, I'm gay and society says that that's not okay in this like super Christian right wing. But here's the thing, alt right or whatever that's against these things, that's it's a small piece of the pie. Okay, if it's a spectrum, like, I'm not saying they don't exist, and I'm not saying we don't acknowledge those people, but it's not as many people as you think. It seems like a lot, but it's kind of really not. It's not the majority anymore. And maybe at one time, through a cycle, just like a moon, at one time that group of people was the full moon. Well, they're waning and or yeah, they're waning out, and now we have a new like population that's the full moon of like perspective or whatever that is being spotlight and highlighted right now. So it like you start to, again, you always find, you eventually always end up deep diving into like societal principles, and then you get really philosophical and spiritual, and you have to kind of deconstruct all of those things and acknowledge the present day, because a lot of people, myself included, at multiple times, you're not operating in a perspective of presence, it's of trauma. And so in modern general society, for the most part, I'm not saying there aren't hate crimes or chaos that happens, but generally speaking, you can go to the store and have a decent interaction with whoever, and they are a completely, you know, unique individual, separate of you. You know what I mean? Like, you're not having, there's not hateful interactions just because you walked outside. Now, every now and then you might go outside and someone might say something shitty to you, but the probability of that happening for no provoked reason is small, for the most part. Except nowadays people are doing things for social media. So then, like, it's like, well, hey, there is a reason. They're just trying to get shock value. This is rage baiting, and it's actually not real. Most of this stuff is, again, that's my point. Most of this stuff is not real. In reality, most people are friendly. Most people, like, are just trying to, like you said, they don't care about a lot of these other things. They're just trying to feed their kids and, like, live a good life and be happy. So, but they again, psychosis, they get in their head, or they're acting from a place of like, hey, one time this thing happened to me, and now like I think every time I go out of my house I'm going to experience a hate crime because this one night I ran into this one it was a bad aligned experience. However, you can't carry that with you into the future. Like, that's like like that again. So what I was talking about like earlier about how the extreme light is the extreme shadow, is to go out and then live your life, you have to accept a level of risk that you can't control. No amount of legislation can control. People are going to do what they're going to do. They're going to find ways to do it if they really seek that. And that's like where like the power of your will. So if you are dead set on harming somebody, you are going to find a way to do it one way or another. And whether that is because you are a dictator or because you are a piece of shit boyfriend, if you want to hurt somebody, you're going to hurt somebody. And you can't operate out of fear, and you have to accept that free will is a risk. But even choosing security, so like, because that was a quote that came up, Thomas Jefferson, someone, I was listening to Joe Rogan and Tim Dillon, and they said that like they were quoting one of the fucking presidents about those who trade liberty for security to deserve neither. That's kind of like that understanding, because like if you risk all security where you are conforming and staying safe and small in a, you're fitting yourself into a box, you don't have any room to grow, but you're nice and comfortable, cozy in the box, the shell. You never have to leave it. It's nice and warm, it's comfortable. You're refusing to leave the cocoon, essentially. That is complacency, and that is suffering, and that is a risk of negativity itself. Because like, what happens? You atrophy, you decay, you still die. You know, like is you does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So then, yeah, just
So you're risking it one way or another. You're risking and suffering. Like that's like a more Buddhist approach. Like suffering is inevitable. Yes, there's this hate crime and like that happened to you, and like I said, so you need to heal from it. But then once you have actually healed from it and you're not living you're not viewing your daily life in a state of fight or flight. That's what nervous system integration is. Like, do you know how many times I have irrationally freaked out at my husband because like something will happen that's kind of inexplainable. It's like it's a trigger. It's so subtle. He doesn't know what happened. I know what happened, but don't really know what happened because I'm already reacting. And it's because that's PTSD. A sound, something triggered me into this state of I'm not in a safe relationship anymore. I'm packing up my stuff. I am leaving. You are, and like it's all of these horrible things. And he's like, what did I do? And then calm down. And then I have like over years of being married and all of these things, you realize like, oh, I thought I worked on this, but I didn't. And so it's kind of because like you will be surprised at how many things come back up. Because I had thought I had worked on this and I thought I was like in a good state and I was fine. And then, well, then you get married. And then like you elevate your relationship and then you see the depth of those same relationship traumas. And not just relationship in the sense that I'm using like a literal relationship. I mean my relationship to the experience of what happened. So just because my husband said a certain word doesn't mean that word is intended in the same way that it used to be used against me. You know what I mean? It's like those kinds of things. Like I'm associating a negative what experience to a word to something external and therefore I have demonized it and it is evil. People do that all the time. So once you deconstruct something and you don't make it evil anymore, that's not spiritual bypassing. That's not neglecting the harm or the potential harm of said energy, deity, experience, etc. It is alchemizing this aware, like that is not what's happening in the present moment. I know it can happen. It did happen, so I could be aware. So that you know what I mean? Like the things that happen to you, it's for awareness. So you can't use awareness as a way to be paranoid, which a lot of people get stuck in, which is where you get more psychosis, which is where then you're constantly seeking external validation for a confirmation of your own thought instead of trusting what is actually happening around you. And then people get it, and then you get into the complexity of like intuition and spiritual gifts and you being able to feel these spidey senses. But here's the thing, you can be alert of something, detach from it, make note of it, and kind of wait for it to. So this is, I think, where people can kind of get lost in some stuff is so because the more awareness you have. So I'm aware, like I noted this intuition that I had. I didn't react on it, but I made a note of it. I calculated it. I detached from it because in the present moment, I calculated I am safe in this moment, but I still felt weird about it. So that's the next steps is you start noting, okay, so if we're going to do the anchor of suicide, when do I feel suicidal? Hey, in this moment, I felt suicidal in this moment. Okay, you're just taking notes. And then eventually it'll all kind of manifest or play out into a present moment, a cataclysm, a reality experience that you now have to confront and face, which is the ultimate release of healing. So it's like the core reason of why maybe you're suicidal is because of something that happened to you when you were a really small child. There's a starting point for everything essentially in that traumatic experience. And so you take notes of all of these things and then something like, again, a big cataclysm will happen. Usually you end up crying. Usually it's like kind of dramatic. And that's the shadow work. That's the somatic therapy, like where you're releasing it from your body. And that's what tears do. Tears help regulate your nervous system. So then if like, you're making sure you're doing this in a safe environment that's not going to trigger you. And that's like what bad trips are. Most of the time. Most of the time a bad psychedelic trip is when you're going through something like that without someone guiding you, because you're not anticipating going through that. But if you have awareness and you're on the spiritual healing path, you're going to be aware of all these dark thoughts. And then like for the most part, it's usually, hey babe, I need to talk about something. And it's like kind of a little bit more silly. I'm still crying, it's still dramatic, but it's not as explosive. You know what I mean? Like eventually it goes from being explosive and then it gets smaller and smaller and smaller until eventually you feel that state of indifference. And then you're not noticing that intuition anymore. So for example, like for me specifically in my suicidalism and journey, the mental note that I was taking was every time I was around somebody that made me feel like I didn't deserve to exist as I was. And that sounds dramatic. That sounds really dramatic. But my issue, what I found out, is it wasn't that I hated myself. It wasn't that I was a bad person. It wasn't any of these things that I had maybe tried to convince myself. It's like, well, I'm a bad person. Like I told myself so many different things. It's like that weren't true, which was crazy to admit. Me lying to myself. Like I was making myself to be a bad person to fit what? It's like, well, no, it's because when I was myself, it made other people uncomfortable. And because I made other people uncomfortable and then they emotionally reacted in a way, for example, my mom, she would be intoxicated and she would react. And then it would be something really hateful and heavy. So I was like, oh, and I associated so example, me talking, I associated me talking as something negative. So then I would stop talking and then I would feel suicidal. I'd be like, well, I'm yapping away and I'm just being Sarah and I'm just like really excited. And then someone would make a face or someone would say something and maybe they're being endearing, like my husband. He'll laugh and he'll be super endearing. And it's obviously a sweet, sentimental moment that I should be enjoying in my relationship, where he'll be like, man, babe, you really have a lot to say today. Or he'll be like, or just as a boundary that's not a threat, he'll say, babe, I've had a long day. I really just want to watch TV. Like, we can talk tomorrow. I have not handled that well because I'm instantly thinking that he doesn't love me. I need to shrink. I need to do that. I need to do all of these things and I can't exist. I have to change. I have to die. I have to go kill myself now because I can't exist because I'm too much. And it's like and it's like, that's a dramatic experience for something small. It didn't start out small. That is something small and subtle that shows how, like, you know, your quantum field, your emotion, water is associated with emotions for a reason, because it can get oceanic pretty quickly in that sense. So it takes something really subtle and then it takes that awareness and that healing of trust with my husband to go, like, he has to take on the role of calm, the rock, and the emotional stability that like women tend to want in a man. And so he will be like, why are we upset? Like, he's calm, like, for the most of the time. My husband hasn't always been perfect, and that's like, you know, the duality of marriage and a relationship, men and women and all of the above. But in the moment where he obviously needs to be there the most, he's like, let's talk this through. And he like it sounds kind of childish, but did I yell at you? No. Do I get mad at you for talking? No. Is it just been a long day? Yeah. Is that okay? I'm like, yeah. And then I feel really dumb for even thinking that he was a monster, who is like, you think there's a monster under your bed and then you realize it's just your shoe. And then you feel really fucking dumb. And then the whole point of that is to not make yourself feel bad. Because it's like, well, it's not that you feel dumb, you feel silly. Because you realize, like, wow, I'm not living in reality. Reality is I'm in a safe, happy, healthy marriage. And why am I self-sabotaging this? It's like, well, because you are defensive. You are defending yourself to kill, not defending yourself to problem solve. And then you have to start changing. It's a whole transformation. So like when you talk about like steps of the shadow work, it's patience, it's grace, that's where, when it comes to forgiveness, it's forgiveness isn't forgetting or letting go of what happened. Forgiveness is holding the space for the flaw of the human who is also going through their own emotional, psychosocial, spiritual experience as their own autonomous entity. So like, and that can be really hard. Does that make, because you know what I mean? Because like you're in your head, so it's all about, it's like, okay, you have to be able to accept that it's your reality, your perspective is, even once you work through all of these shadow aspects, they still have their own experience separate from that. And because again, the yin yang, the masculine and feminine, even when they're connected, they're still separate. There's still a line that separates them. They are, so if you look at the yin yang specifically, they have the two circles in there that symbolize that there's light, dark, and dark and light. Think of it like a tower. They're like snapped together. They're not like blended together, or like maybe they're molded. They're like connected together. Like again, an atom.
Yeah, yeah,
A
yeah.
molecule. You know, it's like, it's that chemical bond. So yeah.
Yeah, sick.
Is it all okay? Did all that make sense? Did I like wrap that together?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and like, yeah, just having, like you
I
said,
don't know if I
holding.
answered your question. Sorry.
What was my? Well, just kind of that process of like, yeah, just taking someone through healing, holding that space for whatever you need to. I mean, you said you don't like that word holding space, but it's kind of funny because one, there's not a lot of holding and there's not a lot of space typically, right? So like, in today, it's like one, just hold yourself still, and then create space to process what you need to.
Well, yeah, and so like I guess like from an Aquarius perspective, a good visual metaphor that would kind of bridge it, especially in like, so I'm using the example of my husband in the sense that that's a easily relatable to everyone is trying to find a partner, whether it's man, woman, I don't give a fuck, doesn't matter. Everyone to an extent wants a partner that aligns with them. Everyone needs someone they can trust, and that doesn't matter if it's a best friend, a spouse. There, you can't entirely exist by yourself. Human beings, there's that social emotional connection that we crave. It doesn't have to be on a grand scale, but we at least need it with ourselves, and I would say someone else. Like the family unit is significant for the human experience in a variety of ways. And that, again, that does not mean that you have a conservative Christian perspective of husband, wife, 3 kids, picket fence. It could be, you could be the gay single uncle, but you still have your sister or your mom or someone in your life that you can connect to in that way. And that's just love. So people always associate love with romance. I I guess it's a brag. It's just it's gratitude. That's what it is I am a very lucky woman who gets to have my best friend and lover and this person kind of all in one, and it hasn't been without work, which goes into like my visual that I want to get into. So whatever this relationship is, again, it could be a person, it could be a career, it can be an idea. What the intention of manifestation is this relationship, okay? So you and your relationship to whatever it is. So for me, I'm using my husband as an example, and our relationship and the work that we put into it and the tops and turvies of it is we meet, okay? So there's clay. So that's the earth. That's the symbolism of it. So again, Aquarius, because Aquarius is it's a man essentially. I like to express it not just as like a human. It's a special. It gets weird in the Greek mythology. It's a whole thing. But what I want to paint is it's this but I would personally call it like a Lucifer energy. It's this spirit of gnosis. That's like Aquarius. So yes, it might manifest into a man because Aquarius is an air, which is a masculine energy. So I understand that's where this masculine spirit comes in. That's like very humanoid, which is in a lot of myths. A lot of gods and deities have human-like qualities. So it's this human spiritual figure that has a vessel that pours water. Okay, so the vessel, clay, because especially in the myth, they use clay for pottery. So that's earth. And then you have water, which is the emotion. So the Aquarius is the spiritual gnosis that nurtures the, like, that enchants the water, that is contained in earth. So a grounded perspective that nurtures the earth, essentially, like the plane, because it's pouring it from the stars. So that's like the Aquarius or air sign connection to the cosmos as well as the air element. They're up in the sky and they're pouring like the healing, nurturing gnosis, enchanted water in a grounded container. And you know, so there's all of those like elements. So for the visual metaphor, when you're trying to build this relational connection to someone, you can view it as if you are the Aquarian or this like spiritual entity. So it's your soul, all right? So it's your soul essence is building your container to hold space for the emotion with for that intention. So if I'm building a relationship with my husband and we're building a container to hold space in our lives, because if you like, because they meditation, they talk about visuals all the time. So a lot of times they'll tell you to envision like a shelf of things that you don't like and you clean it out, and you're visualizing yourself taking the thing you don't like and you're throwing it away.
Or putting
So
stuff in a box. Like one
yeah,
thing,
like
like locking stuff in a chest.
yeah, so like those are different examples. So this is a different visualization technique, but in like co-creating a container that is both like it's creating puzzle pieces to fit together. So I'm creating the vase, Chad's helping me build the vase. We're coexisting and co-creating this vase together to hold the water. However, in the beginning, it's messy. If you are a novice to anything, it's a new relation. We talk about this all the time. It's don't do get what how do you word it? No, you take things off your plate. Do less. Get rid of the all or nothing mentality. That's what you say. So you're getting rid of the all or nothing like mentality, and so you're kind of enjoying the experience together of building this container. And I think for couples, there does become a point where maybe you build the container and it dries and it holds the water and you can put it on your shelf and you display it. And then from there, you would ritualize it by constantly refreshing the water, adding flowers. You would constantly be re-enchanting it, so to speak, right? But you've made it like you're both perfectly fucking happy with the vase. However, maybe because like when you built it, there was a weakness in the foundation and it cracks and it's a dam and explodes. You can either choose to separate and not create another vase, or you can work together to recreate a vase. But through that, again, to rebuild a better structure, a bigger space for this relationship that grew, you're going to have to kind of work through, well, what was the weak point, which is not always a fun conversation. Because it's like, well, you were the weak point here, and well, you were the weak point there. And then you start pointing fingers at each other, and that is necessary, but not fun. So a lot of people say that that's not healthy. It's unmasked confrontation. And when my husband and I kind of got to a place of understanding that, like, both of us genuinely are bringing these things up so we can build the vase together, not because we're trying to just, you know, like we're not passing the blame. It's like it's constructive. And so it's like being able to tell each other, okay, well, hey, there's a weak point here because you criticized me in a way that actually wasn't the way I needed it, because I'm my own entity. So you doing things your way and me doing things, you need to let me do things my way, and I need to let you do things your way, and us doing things our way together is the harmony. That's the chemistry that makes a beautiful vase. And if we both trust each other to build that together, then maybe we'll have less issues, because I'm not trying to make myself be you and you're not trying to make yourself be me, or vice versa, and all of those things that happen when you coexist with someone. You absorb a lot of their tendencies, and you might lose yourself to an extent. And that's where a lot of relationships, and you battle codependency, which is also integrated in a lot of our society.
It's so true. It's very true.
Yeah, so it's just like that's like it's a never-ending journey with the shadow, and that's why you just got to keep going through the cycles, keep integrating it. And that's why I think it's important to like make note of things, because things repeat itself and they deepen. So that's like Pisces energy. We're in a Pisces full moon lunar eclipse, blah 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 right now. So Pisces is the void. It's the flood. It is everything. It is like all the possibilities. It's Neptune and Jupiter. So Jupiter is about expansion. It's like it's the biggest planet. So there's all of these like abundant energies, but to keep growing, there's like the dreamy illusion creative energy of Neptune, and then again more water symbolism. Think about it. You're born in blood, which is water. Like in it, like your cocoon is filled with water. And then you're born, so like you can't deny those like water Piscean energies of that symbolism. And so when we talk about like cycle syncing or ritualizing, your like the whole human experience is a spiritual experience, and like you don't want to separate yourself from it, so you want to ritualize and anoint your daily tasks in authentic or pure intention of your soul, for that manifest whatever rebirth essentially.
But yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Sorry, I was like, how do I end that sentence? I don't know.
So where are we now?
In what way? For
Like
like cycle
like
wise? Okay, so we're towards the end. We're almost at the fall equinox, which is on a lunar grand scale, it's equivalent to the last quarter, which is so the full moon is the climax of and then the last quarter is the conclusion as it winds down. So then the waning crescent is like the final author notes of ending the story, right? So in like our year cycle, we're reaching like the essentially the conclusion. For you and I specifically, it's leading towards the finality, excuse me, of our Pisces, more Pisces energy, Saturn return. Because Saturn went into Aries and then it retrograded back into Pisces. It goes direct October 4th, and then I don't know how long it's in Pisces for. Then I can't remember all of that, but I do know it's like reverted into Pisces. So that's the illusion of the retrograde. So we had that kind of like sense of relief, which for you, a good indication of that is like everything that you've been doing with Justin, right? I was gonna call him Jason, that's wrong. Justin. So like that's like a big piece to it. And then like Saturn went to Aries, and it's like, see, like so me, I was doing really good with markets. Like there was this whole like uprise, right? Well, then it retrograded back, and it might seem like it kind of lulled into different adversarial complications in a way. And that's the test of like, all right, no, you've been rehearsing, you've been practicing, you've gone through all the motions. It's showtime, baby. Like that's what this retrograde is that final conclusion, not so much the climax, but the conclusion, the opening night of everything that we've been working on. And then it'll start to like wane out into after October 4th, in the Saturn perspective, it'll start to wane out from there, which then goes into Scorpio season, which is like a karmic turning of the wheels. So that could be, again, it's harvest season, so that's where you'll start to reap the benefits of your harvest. Like so all the seeds you planted, they'll blossom. This is like, because things blossom at different times, but this is like the grand harvest where you're harvesting all of your crops and you're preparing for winter. And then in what do we do in winter? It's a reassessment of like, okay, so this was all the manifestations, this was our harvest. I'm showing all the gratitude in the world, no matter how big or small it is. That's what the holiday seasons are. It's showing gratitude, and the more gratitude you show, that's why they tell you to be really grateful, because the more gratitude you show, like it's that helps fuels your excitement to keep going. Because if you're not grateful for what you got, like you're not gonna redo your garden again. You're like, what's the fucking point of this? Like I got like 2 pumpkins, like that's not gonna feed my family. I'm gonna go back and do the safe thing but no, it's like, no, I fucking did 2 pumpkins, like me. Like I get so excited over stupid things, and people are like, That's like the smallest thing in the world to get excited about. Yeah, it was like, but I did it. I did it by myself. Like all the things that all the time I took to learn this, all the time I put in to all of this, I did this. Like, you're not going to take that away from me. I don't care. Like, oh, well, it's not as big as this person's pumpkin. It's not as orange. It's not as whatever. It's like, okay, thank you. How, well, I'll get better. How do I make bigger pumpkins? Oh, well, actually, the reason this pumpkin was small is because I just planted it in the ground this year. Then you can get into a lot of other conspiracy things, which is, hey, seeds nowadays don't regenerate like they used to. Like, things used to plant things and then they used to kind of reseed themselves, and it's like regenerative farming used to be a natural thing. And now it's because of all the genetic stuff, like it may not be as natural. It kind of depends on where you go with down that rabbit hole. And so then you realize, like, wow, every year I'm replanting this seed. That means you got to plant fucking hundreds of more seeds. You need bigger, like, so it's, again, you have to expand, you have to grow, you have to adapt, but not give up, but still be excited and rooted in the fact that you're figuring out how to do it yourself regardless of what's in your way. And that's rewarding. That's where we get over like instant gratification and all of those things. Because nowadays it seems like, well, if it was good, it would all work out immediately. It's like, well, that's not how legacies work. That's how one-hit wonders work. And what
Yeah.
are you trying to be? You want to be a one-hit wonder? Because guess what? One-hit wonders make millions of dollars all the time. Because if it's a really good one-hit wonder, they constantly are paying you royalties unless you sold your rights to someone and then they can use it inevitably and blah, 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 blah. But if you own your rights, every time someone wants to revive the 80s and they pick your song, they have to pay you. So really, if you think about it, you only need one really good thing that's going to stick forever, which is not a bad legacy to leave behind. I think legacy is something more like Metallica. Regardless of the ups and downs, you cannot deny where they stand on top of the mountain. You know what I mean? Like, that's a legacy in a variety of different ways. Even if you personally feel they sold out after the Black Album or what the fuck ever, like, there's so you then you get into the fandom of things, and that's just for that should just be for funsies. But you're still not trying to take away. You're still not knocking them off their tower. You know what I mean? No matter what you say about Metallica, even if it's true, you're not knocking them off the tower. And that's, to me, that's a legacy. Is like they created something impenetrable that is going to ultimately be in history books. As like in music theory, you are going to talk about Metallica as a rock band. And that's pretty cool. Like, to think about hundreds of years from now, people are still gonna be talking about these guys, and you can't tell me that you're not, like, you know, because you are. They are. It's just like you're always going to talk about the Beatles. You're always going to talk about Black Sabbath. Metallica is the late 70s, early 80s version of that.
Oh
So.
yeah. Well, it was funny you say that because that's like my and maybe they're not the same, but Avenged Sevenfold.
Well, no, I know they wanted to be the next Metallica, and I struggle with that. And here's the thing: I think they could have made it, and I think to an extent they did. But when the Rev died, you realize who was the band. He was the
Yeah.
creative influence of the band. And here's the thing: so he is an Aquarius. M Shadows is a Leo. M Shadows, you can tell a part of his creative spark that was influenced by his brother, his soulmate, in his creative venture. Like, we're talking about these relationships. I think he would be a little bit more successful if maybe he did his own thing. But I think he's trying to preserve, and I get it, it's honoring his brother. There's so much complexity in the emotional connection of that spiritual alignment and why the band went the way that it did and where it is now. Which is, for me, is why I'm no longer a part of it, but I also understand why people are still a part of the fandom and like the creative interpretation. Like, so I can respect it. Which is kind of potentially where Metallica went in their own way, because like I said, they set the intention to be the next Metallica, and I feel like spiritually they accomplished that for the early 2000s. Well, yeah, early 2000s, like generation. What would that be? Gen Z, I would say, maybe. Like, it depends on what age group you're talking about, because they were popular for a variety of people. But if you're talking about like our age group, specifically, we're a zillennial. We're the last year of millennial, like the last year before Gen Z. So we're right on that cusp of things. So they are a voice of a generation in like a rock music industry for a variety of ways. However, you see where I think they kind of missed a step as far as like reaching that legacy status, personally. And I think that step was, I think the Rev died a little too early. I think he needed to complete the Nightmare album. And then, not that he should have ever died, but like that, I think him dying in the middle of that album kind of, I think it was a spiritual test in a lot of ways, but I think they missed like a mark, if that makes sense.
Yeah, Nightmare was just, it was okay.
Well, there was too much grief, and that's what I'm talking about when people act without healing. Like they kind of scrambled that together, and I think if they
It
would have
feels like
taken
it.
the time to pause and grieve, but I understand. Like, here's the thing: that's probably a highlight to the music industry, and that they don't care to take the time to allow people that to process that because it's about money, about records. And you said you're releasing this record on this day and get the fuck going. It's like, dude, our drummer overdosed. He's been our best friend since we were a child. This isn't just some hired gun that we don't give a fuck about. This is, you know what I mean? Like, there's no respect in how any of that was handled. And so I don't think that they were able to put out a fair album. I think they could have honored, I think a few things. The Rev didn't die for Nightmare. I think if he completed that album, I think it would have been fucking stellar. You can hear where his energy was and where they were trying to recreate it, keep going with you can see all of that. And as a super fan who's watched all of the behind the scenes movies and videos, you know, we geeked out over it. Like, you know how involved he was. Like that spark of everything, that Aquarian energy that his Leo soulmate needed. And like it's so cute because it's a sister sign. I just think that's so fun to me because there's so much of that polaric energy. I don't know the other guys' birthdays or charts, but then you have like Zachy and Sinister who are like left and righty and doing like that whole yin yang opposite like guitar thing. Like it was such great chemistry and it was shattered. And I think for a variety of reasons, I don't think they fully recovered from it. Like I said, I think if they were either given time or if the Rev could have finished the album, they could have reached a certain level of legacy status. But I also, because like I stuck with them through Hail to the King, and after that, I just couldn't do it anymore.
Yeah, that was honestly, that was Nightmare for me. Like I just went back through. It was funny because we were just talking about that yesterday and the day before. I went back and listened to Sounding Semi Trumpet and Wake in the Fallen because those are my special ones. And so I had to go re-listen to those a ton. And it's crazy because I mean they were just like one of those metalcore bands, right? Kind of like now, just like one of those garage like metalcore bands having a good time. But they were still so talented. Like nobody was doing progressive metalcore like they were. Like, you know, when you listen to the songs, it's like, you know, now you listen to any like metalcore album, it's like intro, verse, chorus, breakdown, done. That's it.
Well, what I think is unique.
But these guys were like, they kept going. Like every one of their songs, like City of Evil, they did that very well. But even sounding the seventh trumpet, all of those songs still had that progressive nature that just like people don't have. Like you could just you knew that they were talented at the time. And
Well, that to me, sounding the seventh trumpet kind of like that's you can tell where they're young, they're kids, they're going off of the
yeah, it was in a
scene of their,
garage. You could
and
hear them like
yeah,
just
and
having a
like,
good time.
and that's what I like about it, and that's what, but it proves their talent because they're kind of,
Extremely
they're
talented.
finding their steps, right? They're getting their stride. They're figuring things out. City of Evil, why it was so perfect is it like not. I don't want to say that you should have kept creating City of Evil albums, but you should have kept creating like you did when you were in like whatever inspired you to create City of Evil. That same type of creative process was magical. The White Album I feel like was still really good, but I think that they really tried to
Then they
that's
started to branch.
well,
Then they
that's where
started
I
to
think
evolve.
like the industry got they because City of Evil was again huge. So then I think like Warner Brothers got involved, like all of this other stuff. What was like, okay, let's let's do what we did to Metallica to you guys. It's gonna work. And then it flopped. Why? Saturn, Pluto. We can get into all the astrology about it, which I think is super fun. Because at the time of their decline, Capricorn's in Pluto, which is all about breaking down business, and we're moving in. Pluto's in Aquarius right now, which is all about creative input, which is what they had. But then they start to go the other way. Their Aquarius dies. Like, it's just so crazy to me, like how it all like played out in like such a tragedy. But I do know, I don't know. Okay, I kind of know. They seem to be a little bit more like Christian conservative leaning of a band. Like, I don't fully, because like they are progressive in certain ways, but like there's complexities in their message that I don't know how to, I don't want to mislabel them. But if they have more Christian based beliefs, I can see how they miss the opportunity, essentially speaking.
Yeah, and I was kind of, because when I was listening to some of those songs the other day, like you could hear how there could have been Christian influence,
Well, their band
which
name
was
came
funny
from
because
the
when I
Book of
listened to that,
Revelations. Like that's what he said. He goes, they were just looking up band names, and so I went home and I was like, well, let's look in the Bible because they were taking influence from all these other things, and like that was like a they do have like a spiritual faith to them, and I don't think that that's necessarily a negative thing, but I think particularly in Christian hardcore Christian metal bands, you're missing the point. I don't like the whole point is it's an anti-Christian movement and you can't Christianize it. Personally, I would think anyone who is energetically trying to Christianize an anti-Christian movement is going to get swallowed up and made an example of in some way. Now, I don't know their personal beliefs in that way. That's just like a theory. But the M Shadows got the band name by flipping through the Bible, and it was in the Book of Revelations. Now, you can also see, like lyrically, where they have like a genuine like Jesus or Luciferian approach to like the interpretation of like City of Evil has biblical references as well as psychedelic references, and so they're well-educated men in that realm of things. So I could see them like having a ceremonial magic, a grounded, a genuine occult perspective of the Bible. Like they interpreted the Bible accurately, is my whole point. Like they're in California, I see it being a little bit more open-minded as far as like the Christian interpretation goes. It's not their Southern Baptist or anything like that. However, um, if how would I just like explain that? Like I just think that there's not if you have too deep of a Western Christian perspective, you're missing certain philosophical principles that can help you alchemize or leverage out of tower moments or cataclysms of death, change, disruption, which for them was the death of their Aquarius, who, here's the thing, was probably the wild card, was probably the main reason why they had that edgier perspective. You know what I mean? Like that balance of ceremonial occultic interpretation of the Bible. Like I could see the Rev reading that hello, it was the Rev. So like he was reading those things and he's educating people. That's an Aquarian thing. This is the real like message of the Bible with this artistic symbolism, and that's where you see the creative juice of everything that band was came from him. And then you see that when he died they fell on their face, in my personal opinion. I think that they tried to grasp onto what he was like inspired them. I think he was their light. He inspired them. He got them to, and maybe showed them true nature to themselves, and then again just got lost. And I've been thinking, I've thought about this all for a long time. I have psychoanalyzed this probably almost every day since he died.
well, shoot, this was fun. I think we might get kicked off here at 2 hours.
Yeah,
Um,
I was like, holy shit. And I could hear in the door, and I'm like, Chad's gonna walk in, and he's gonna piss me off.
no, this was cool. Well, thank you for having me on. Um,
Yeah, so what am I gonna have to start doing this by myself now, or are you gonna just ambush me to do a podcast every now and then?
let's come up with a strategy.
Okay.
So here, yeah, well, yeah, again, um, we'll let these guys go, and then yeah, let's talk because there's like some background stuff after this episode to walk through.
All right. So how do I end this?
Click the.
Well, no, I know how to say. I know how to click the stop button, but like, see you later. I don't have an exit strategy. My hello was welcome to the moon juice or whatever.
Yeah, dang it. Click. It says don't stop recording, but don't say stop recording for all. I think you can just say stop recording.
Okay.
Is there at the bottom of the screen?
Now let's see.